The McLeod family reunion happened every 2 years at my uncle's ranch in Montana, where 43 relatives gathered to catch up, complain about politics, and debate whose potato salad recipe was superior. This year I'd driven 12 hours from my apartment in Washington, D.C., looking forward to 3 days of mountain air and family stories I'd heard a dozen times before. What I hadn't expected was to become the centerpiece of the weekend's entertainment. Maya's finally learning financial responsibility, Aunt Patricia announced during Saturday's barbecue, raising her beer bottle like she was toasting my personal growth. We helped her get out from under that ridiculous mortgage before it destroyed her credit completely. The assembled relatives, cousins, second cousins, in-laws, and family friends erupted in approving murmurs. Uncle Bob clapped me on the shoulder with his meaty hand. Government jobs are steady, but they don't pay enough for homeownership in D.C. We should have intervened sooner. My cousin Tyler, fresh out of business school and eager to demonstrate his financial expertise, held court near the grill. Maya was drowning in a $400,000 mortgage on a government salary. The math just doesn't work. We calculated her debt-to-income ratio and realized she was headed for foreclosure within 18 months. Thank God family stepped in, added cousin Sarah, bouncing her toddler on her hip. Now she can rent something reasonable and actually save money instead of throwing it away on mortgage payments she couldn't afford. I smiled and nodded, accepting congratulations from relatives who'd apparently spent considerable time analyzing my financial situation. According to the family narrative, my modest government position at the Treasury Department barely covered basic living expenses, let alone a mortgage in one of the country's most expensive real estate markets. We're just relieved you won't have to file bankruptcy, Aunt Patricia continued, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd prevented a family disaster. When we saw how much you were struggling, we knew we had to act. What they didn't know was that I worked for the Office of Intelligence and Analysis within the Treasury Department, specializing in counterterrorism financing investigations. My security clearance was classified at the top secret level, which meant every financial transaction I made was monitored by federal oversight systems designed to detect potential compromise, coercion, or foreign influence. What they especially didn't know was that unauthorized property transfers involving federal employees with security clearances trigger automatic investigation protocols within 4 hours of detection. Tell everyone how we did it, Uncle Bob encouraged Patricia, his chest puffed with pride at their family teamwork. Patricia launched into the story she'd clearly been rehearsing. We contacted a real estate attorney who specializes in distressed property situations. Explained that Maya was too embarrassed to ask for help, but the family wanted to prevent a foreclosure that would hurt everyone's credit. The lawyer was amazing, Tyler added. He handled all the paperwork to transfer the property to a family trust, paid off Maya's mortgage debt, and arranged for her to rent from us at market rate. Everyone wins. Maya gets affordable housing, the family preserves the property value, and we avoid the foreclosure stigma. Market rate is $2,800 per month, Sarah chimed in. Much more reasonable than mortgage payments that were probably twice that amount. The gathering continued, buzzing with approval. Multiple relatives approached me throughout the afternoon, offering additional financial advice and expressing relief that the family had rescued me from my poor decision-making. According to them, I'd been too proud to ask for help, too naive about real estate markets, and too trusting of mortgage brokers who'd approved me for more house than I could afford. I thanked everyone sincerely. I hugged my aunt and uncle. I complimented their problem-solving skills and expressed gratitude for their concern about my financial well-being. Because in my line of work, you learn that immediate reactions often reveal less than patient observation. What I observed was that no one had actually asked me about my mortgage balance, my monthly payments, or my financial situation. They'd made assumptions based on general knowledge about government salaries and DC housing costs, then acted on those assumptions without verification. What I also observed was that the real estate attorney had apparently executed a complex property transfer without my knowledge, consent, or participation. In my professional experience, that usually constituted fraud. Sunday morning, while the family prepared for the traditional farewell brunch, I called my security officer from the privacy of my rental car. Christine, this is Maya Chin. I need to report unauthorized access to my financial assets by family members. They've apparently transferred my property to a family trust without my knowledge. Maya, are you safe? Are you being coerced? Christine's voice sharpened with professional concern. I'm physically safe. This appears to be misguided family assistance rather than hostile action. But they've executed legal documents transferring my house and mortgage without my consent or participation. How long ago? Based on their timeline, approximately 6 weeks. They're celebrating it as financial rescue from mortgage debt I couldn't afford. Maya, your mortgage payments are automatically monitored through Treasury security protocols. You've never shown any payment irregularities or financial stress indicators. I know that. They don't. I'm initiating immediate investigation protocols. Don't sign any documents, don't acknowledge consent to any transfers, and don't discuss your actual financial situation until federal agents contact you. Understood. I returned to the brunch where my relatives were sharing final stories and exchanging contact information. The conversation kept returning to my rescue and the family's pride in their collective problem-solving. Maya looks so much more relaxed now that the mortgage stress is gone, observed cousin Janet, my father's sister who taught elementary school in Oregon. You can see the weight lifted from her shoulders. That's what family is for, Uncle Bob declared, serving himself a third helping of scrambled eggs. We look out for each other. Aunt Patricia pulled me aside during coffee service. I hope you understand this was all done with love. We could see you were struggling even though you're too proud to admit it. Government jobs are honorable work, but they don't provide the kind of income needed for DC homeownership. I appreciate your concern, I replied honestly, because I did appreciate their intention, even while recognizing the criminal methods they'd used to express it. The rent payments will go directly into the family trust, she continued. We're thinking of it as forced savings. When you're ready to buy something more affordable, maybe in Virginia or Maryland, the trust can help with a down payment. That's very thoughtful. We just want what's best for you. Sometimes family has to make difficult decisions to protect the people we love. The brunch concluded with the usual promises to stay in touch, group photos, and discussions about the next reunion in 2 years. I hugged everyone goodbye, loaded my car, and began the 12-hour drive back to DC, where my house awaited, the house I'd purchased 3 years earlier with cash from my Treasury Department salary and investment portfolio. Tuesday morning, I was reviewing intelligence reports about cryptocurrency networks funding international terrorism when Special Agent David Kowalski from the FBI's Financial Crime Unit called. Ms. Chen, we need to discuss the unauthorized property transfer flagged by Treasury Security Monitoring. Can you meet us this afternoon at Federal Plaza? The FBI interview took place in a sterile conference room with gray walls and fluorescent lighting that made everything look vaguely institutional. Agent Kowalski was joined by Agent Lisa Martinez from Treasury's own Internal Security Division, both of them reviewing thick files that contained more information about my family's rescue operation than my family had shared with me. Ms. Chen, your family executed a complex property transfer involving forged power of attorney documents, fabricated financial hardship claims, and unauthorized mortgage assumption, Agent Martinez explained, spreading documents across the conference table. The paperwork told a detailed story. A real estate attorney named Robert Hutchinson had filed documents claiming I'd granted power of attorney to my aunt due to severe financial distress and psychological inability to manage complex financial decisions. Medical records had been falsified suggesting I was under psychiatric care for financial anxiety and decision-making impairment. Your aunt signed documents claiming you were experiencing mental health crisis and had requested family intervention to prevent foreclosure, Agent Kowalski continued. The mortgage company approved the transfer based on these medical claims and family hardship documentation. None of which I provided or authorized, I confirmed. The forged power of attorney document bears a signature that doesn't match your security clearance signature on file with Treasury, Agent Martinez noted. The psychological evaluation was conducted by a therapist who has no record of ever treating you. What's the timeline for prosecution? Federal charges will be filed within 48 hours. Wire fraud, identity theft, federal employee financial crimes, and conspiracy. Your aunt, uncle, and the attorney are all facing significant prison time. And my property status? Full ownership restored immediately. The fraudulent transfer is void. Your mortgage, which was never in default, remains in your name with normal payment status. I drove home through D.C. traffic, past the monuments and federal buildings where I spent my days tracking terrorist financing networks across global banking systems. My house looked exactly the same from the outside, 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood, nothing flashy or attention-grabbing. Inside, everything was exactly where I'd left it 3 weeks ago. My books, my coffee maker, my secure home office where I analyzed financial intelligence reports. According to the federal investigation, the family trust had never actually taken possession of the property. The entire rescue operation had existed only on paper, supported by forged documents and fabricated crisis narratives. Wednesday evening, my phone started buzzing with family calls. Aunt Patricia called first, her voice tight with confusion and fear. "Maya, there's been some kind of mistake. FBI agents came to my house with search warrants. They're saying we committed federal crimes, but we were trying to help you." "I'm sure they'll sort everything out," I said, reviewing the federal charges sheet Agent Martinez had provided. Uncle Bob called next, anger replacing confusion in his voice. "What kind of government job do you have that gets family arrested for helping with mortgage problems? This is insane." "Federal employees are subject to security monitoring," I replied. "Unauthorized financial transactions trigger automatic investigations." Tyler called from the county jail where he'd been held pending arraignment. "Maya, you have to tell them this was a misunderstanding. We were trying to save you from foreclosure." "I'll provide whatever testimony the federal prosecutor requests," I said. Thursday morning, Agent Martinez called with updates. "The attorney, Robert Hutchinson, is cooperating fully with our investigation. He's provided detailed records of the fraud scheme and is testifying that your family paid him $15,000 to execute forged documents." "Paid him?" "They pooled family resources to cover legal fees for your rescue. Hutchinson is facing disbarment and federal charges, but his cooperation will help build the case against your relatives." "What's the likely sentence?" "Wire fraud involving federal employee assets carries 3 to 7 years. Identity theft adds consecutive time. Your aunt and uncle are looking at 5 to 10 years each in federal prison." That evening, the extended family group chat exploded with panic and confusion. Cousins posted frantic messages asking for criminal defense lawyer recommendations. Relatives shared articles about federal sentencing guidelines and white-collar crime penalties. I didn't participate in the digital hysteria. Friday morning brought another call from Agent Kowalski. "Ms. Chen, we've uncovered additional evidence suggesting this wasn't your family's first attempt at unauthorized financial intervention. Bank records show they've been monitoring your account balances and credit reports for over a year." "Monitoring how?" "Identity theft for surveillance purposes. They used your social security number to access financial information, apparently to track what they perceived as mounting financial distress." "Which didn't exist." "Correct. Your financial profile shows consistent stability, substantial savings, and perfect credit. But they interpreted your modest lifestyle as evidence of financial struggle." The federal courthouse in D.C. was an imposing building with marble columns and security checkpoints that reminded everyone of the gravity of federal criminal proceedings. I sat in the gallery during the arraignment, watching my aunt and uncle stand before a federal judge in wrinkled clothing that suggested they'd spent the night in holding cells. The prosecutor outlined the charges methodically: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft targeting a federal employee, falsification of medical records, and unauthorized access to federal employee financial information. The evidence included forged documents, bank records, and recorded conversations where my family discussed their intervention strategy. Aunt Patricia cried quietly while Uncle Bob stared straight ahead with the expression of someone trying to understand how helping family had become a federal crime. Their court-appointed attorneys looked like public defenders facing an unwinnable case against well-documented federal charges. "Your Honor, the defendants used forged power of attorney documents and fabricated medical records to steal federal employee property," the prosecutor explained. "They committed identity theft to monitor the victim's financial information, then used that illegally obtained data to justify their fraud scheme." "This was family trying to help family," Uncle Bob's lawyer argued weakly. "There was no criminal intent. Forging medical records and power of attorney documents requires criminal intent," the judge replied sharply. Ignorance of federal employee security protocols is not a defense for identity theft and wire fraud. Bail was set at $100,000 each, with electronic monitoring and prohibitions against contacting me or accessing any financial institutions. The trial was scheduled for 4 months later, giving both sides time to prepare for what the prosecutor described as a clear-cut case of federal financial crimes. In the courthouse hallway, their attorneys approached me separately, both requesting character statements that might influence sentencing. Ms. Chin, your aunt and uncle genuinely believed they were helping you avoid foreclosure, Patricia's lawyer explained. A statement about their good intentions could make a significant difference. Their intentions don't change the legal reality of their actions, I replied. They committed multiple felonies based on assumptions they never verified. But their family. Federal law doesn't provide family exemptions for wire fraud and identity theft. The months leading up to trial were quiet. The extended family group chat stayed silent, no longer buzzing with reunion plans and shared family updates. Individual relatives called occasionally, usually to ask if I could do something to help Patricia and Bob, but I explained that federal prosecutors operate independently of victim preferences. The trial lasted 3 days. Federal prosecutors presented a comprehensive case: forged documents, falsified medical records, unauthorized financial monitoring, and recorded conversations where my family discussed their rescue strategy. The defense argued good intentions and family loyalty, but federal law focuses on actions rather than motivations. My testimony was straightforward. I explained that I worked for Treasury's Office of Intelligence and Analysis with top-secret clearance, that my financial transactions were monitored by federal security systems, and that my family had never asked about my actual financial situation before deciding I needed rescue. Did you ever request help with mortgage payments? The prosecutor asked. No. My mortgage payments are automatically monitored through Treasury security protocols. Any payment irregularities would have triggered immediate review. Did you grant power of attorney to your aunt? No. I've never granted power of attorney to anyone. Did you undergo psychological evaluation for financial anxiety? No. I've never been treated for financial anxiety or decision-making impairment. Did you consent to property transfer to a family trust? No. I learned about the alleged transfer at a family reunion where my relatives celebrated their intervention. The defense attorney tried to suggest that my modest lifestyle had reasonably led family to believe I was struggling financially. Ms. Chin, you drive a Honda Civic and shop at discount stores. Isn't it understandable that family might perceive financial difficulty? Federal employees with security clearances live modestly for operational security reasons, I replied. Personal financial information is classified and not discussed with family members. But your family was trying to help. My family committed federal crimes based on assumptions they never attempted to verify. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts for both defendants. Sentencing took place 3 weeks later with the same federal courthouse gravity and marble columns that emphasized the seriousness of federal criminal consequences. I provided victim impact testimony that focused on the security implications rather than personal betrayal. Your Honor, federal employees depend on financial security monitoring to protect classified operations and national security interests. The defendant's actions compromised those security protocols and could have endangered ongoing intelligence investigations. Aunt Patricia received 4 years in federal prison plus restitution and fines. Uncle Bob received 5 years due to his leadership role in the conspiracy. Both would serve their sentences at minimum security facilities, eligible for early release after serving 2/3 of their time with good behavior. The extended family gathered in the courthouse parking lot afterward, processing the reality that helping family had resulted in federal prison sentences. Several relatives approached me with variations of the same question. Couldn't I have prevented this somehow? Federal security protocols aren't optional, I explained. When family members commit crimes against federal employee assets, the law applies regardless of motivation. Cousin Tyler, who'd avoided charges by cooperating with the investigation, looked at me with something between respect and fear. We never really understood what you do for work. You understood exactly what I told you, I replied. You just decided it wasn't important enough to respect. I drove home alone, through DC traffic that moved normally despite the fact that everything had changed. My house looked the same from the outside, modest, unremarkable, easily underestimated. Inside, I made coffee and returned to analyzing terrorist financing networks, the same work I'd been doing throughout my family's rescue operation. The family group chat stayed quiet for months after the sentencing. When communication eventually resumed, it was different. Careful, respectful. The casual assumptions about my financial situation disappeared, replaced by tentative questions about my work that I answered with the same professional discretion I'd always maintained. Patricia wrote me one letter from federal prison, 6 months into her sentence. She apologized for the crimes and acknowledged that she'd never asked about my actual financial situation before deciding I needed rescue. She said prison had given her time to understand the difference between helping someone and controlling them. I wrote back once, a brief note expressing hope that she used her time constructively and that federal prison libraries had excellent resources for learning about financial crimes and their consequences. The family learned slowly that good intentions don't override federal law. That assumptions can become crimes when you act on them without verification. That federal employees take security protocols seriously, even when their families think they're just pushing papers at boring government jobs. And I learned that sometimes the most effective way to establish boundaries is through federal prosecution, where family loyalty becomes irrelevant and criminal actions face consequences regardless of motivation. 4 to 5 years was a long time to think about the difference between helping and controlling, between family support and criminal conspiracy, between Treasury Department paperwork and counterterrorism financing investigations. But some lessons are worth the time it takes to learn them properly.
These videos will prove everything, my mother-in-law Margaret announced triumphantly, waving a USB drive in the air like a victory flag. I've been gathering evidence for months. She's not the perfect wife everyone thinks she is. I sat quietly in the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap, watching the scene unfold. At 32, I never imagined I'd be here, listening to the woman who once welcomed me into her family trying to destroy my marriage with secretly recorded footage of my daily life. Your Honor, Margaret's voice dripped with satisfaction. These recordings show how she treats my son, how she's ruining his life. 3 months of footage doesn't lie. My name is Olivia Parker, and for the past 8 years, I've been married to James, Margaret's only son. The first few years were wonderful. James and I built a life together, both working in healthcare, me as a pediatric nurse and him as a hospital administrator. But everything changed when Margaret's husband passed away 2 years ago. She moved in with us temporarily, claiming she couldn't bear to be alone. That's when the surveillance began, though I didn't know it at the time. Mrs. Parker, the judge addressed Margaret, his expression neutral. You're saying you installed cameras in your son's house without the knowledge or consent of either resident? It's my house too, Margaret protested. I live there. I had every right to protect my son from her manipulation. I felt James shift uncomfortably beside me. He hadn't spoken to me since Margaret revealed the existence of these recordings last week. His silence hurt more than her accusations. As our lawyer, Sarah Bennett, stood up, I remember the day everything came to light. I'd been working a double shift at the children's ward, covering for a colleague whose daughter was sick. When I got home, exhausted after 16 hours of caring for sick children, Margaret was holding a family meeting in our living room. James's siblings were there, along with their spouses, all wearing expressions of concern and disappointment. Margaret stood in the center, her laptop open, ready to showcase her evidence. Watch this, she had said, playing a clip of me coming home late one night. See how she sneaks in. Who knows where she's been? I tried to explain about my hospital shifts, but Margaret talked over me. And look at this one, she's always on her phone, ignoring my poor James, probably talking to other men. The other men were my patients' parents checking on their children's conditions. But Margaret didn't care about explanations. Now, in the courtroom, Sarah approached the bench. Your Honor, before we proceed with viewing these illegally obtained recordings, I'd like to submit Mrs. Olivia Parker's work schedules and patient care logs for the past 3 months. Margaret scoffed. Those can be faked. The videos don't lie. The judge nodded to the court technician. Let's view the footage. My stomach tightened as the first video played on the courtroom screen. It showed me in our kitchen at 5 a.m., quietly preparing breakfast and lunch for James before heading to my shift. Margaret had conveniently edited out the part where I left a loving note for him every morning. See, Margaret interrupted. She's leaving before he wakes up. What kind of wife does that? The judge held up his hand. Mrs. Parker, please refrain from commentary. Let's continue. More clips played, me coming home late, taking phone calls in the garden, having whispered conversations in our home office. Each moment taken out of context, each action twisted to fit Margaret's narrative. Then something unexpected happened. In one of the clips, the camera caught Margaret herself, entering my home office late at night. She was going through my desk drawers, searching for something. The courtroom fell silent. Margaret's face paled. Your Honor, Sarah spoke up, it seems these recordings capture more than just my client's activities. The next clip showed Margaret in our bedroom, rummaging through my personal belongings. Then another of her reading my private journal on the back porch. And another of her going through my phone while I was in the shower. I was just protecting my son, Margaret stammered. She's not who she pretends to be. James finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, what were you doing in our bedroom? More footage played, showing Margaret having hushed phone conversations of her own. Yes, I'm telling you, she's got to go. James needs someone more traditional, someone who'll stay home. I've got a perfect girl in mind. Yes, Jessica would be much better for him. Jessica, my replacement, already picked out by my mother-in-law. The judge paused the playback. Mrs. Parker, these recordings appear to show a pattern of invasion of privacy and premeditated interference in your son's marriage. Are you aware that in this state, recording someone without their consent in private spaces is illegal? Margaret's composure cracked. But I had to. She's destroying our family with her career and her independence. In my day, wives knew their place. I felt tears welling up but refused to let them fall. For months, I'd endured Margaret's subtle sabotage, her snide comments about my work, her attempts to create distance between James and me. The recordings were just the latest weapon in her arsenal. Your Honor, Sarah said, we have more evidence to present, including text messages between Mrs. Margaret Parker and this Jessica person, discussing plans to end my client's marriage. As Sarah spoke, I noticed James staring at the frozen image on the screen. His mother, in our bedroom, holding my journal with a look of pure satisfaction on her face. The truth was finally unraveling, one frame at a time. The judge called for a brief recess, and as the courtroom emptied, I remained seated, my eyes fixed on my hands. 8 years of marriage, countless night shifts saving children's lives, endless attempts to please a mother-in-law who had already decided to replace me. All of it captured on camera, but not in the way Margaret had intended. Sometimes the evidence you gather tells a different story than the one you thought you were telling. After the recess, Margaret's demeanor had completely changed. Gone was the triumphant smile, replaced by a defensive scowl as more videos played. Each clip she'd meant to use against me instead revealed her calculated interference in our lives. Here's another one from March 15th, the court technician announced. The footage showed me organizing a surprise birthday dinner for James. I'd spent my day off preparing his favorite meals, transforming our dining room with decorations. Then Margaret appeared in the frame, answering James's phone while I was in the kitchen. Oh, sorry, honey. Olivia had to work late again. Margaret's voice rang clear through the speakers. She said not to wait up. I remembered that night. James never came home for the surprise dinner. When I called him, it went straight to voicemail. The food went cold, the candles melted, and I fell asleep at the table waiting for him. Your Honor, Sarah interjected. We have phone records showing my client never made such a call. Mrs. Parker fabricated this excuse to prevent her son from coming home that evening. James turned to his mother, his face a mask of disbelief. Mom, I was so angry at Olivia that night. I thought she'd forgotten my birthday. I was protecting you. Margaret insisted, her voice rising. She's never home, always putting her career first. You deserve someone who'll put family first. The next clip showed Margaret in our garden, talking on her phone. Jessica, darling, remember what we discussed. The charity gala next week. Olivia will be working nights. It's the perfect chance for you to accompany James. Yes, wear that blue dress we picked out. I felt James stiffen beside me. The charity gala, where he'd spent the evening with Jessica, a young receptionist from his hospital's administrative office. Margaret had orchestrated the whole thing, knowing I was scheduled for the pediatric night shift. More footage played. Margaret deleting messages from my phone to James, Margaret accidentally spilling coffee on cards I'd written him. Margaret telling visitors I was probably out with friends when I was actually working saving children's lives. Mrs. Parker, the judge's voice was stern. These recordings document a deliberate pattern of interference and manipulation. Did you consider the impact of your actions on your son's marriage? I did it for James. Margaret's composure finally cracked. She's never been good enough for him. Always working, taking calls at all hours. What kind of wife does that? A pediatric nurse, Mom, James spoke up, his voice stronger now. She takes calls because children's lives depend on her. How many times has she rushed to the hospital at midnight to save a patient? The court fell silent as another clip began playing. This one showed me in our living room at 3 a.m., still in my scrubs, quietly crying while looking at our wedding photo. It was the night I lost my first patient, a 6-year-old girl named Sophie. Margaret's camera caught my vulnerability, but also her reaction, standing in the doorway smirking, making no move to comfort me. Your Honor, Sarah stood. I'd like to submit Olivia's hospital records from that night. A young patient passed away despite my client's best efforts to save her. Rather than receiving support from her family, she was left to grieve alone while her mother-in-law documented her pain. I felt James's hand reach for mine under the table, the first contact we'd had in weeks. His fingers trembled as they intertwined with mine. I have one final clip, Sarah announced, nodding to the technician. The screen showed Margaret in my home office again, this time with Jessica. They were going through my medical certificates and awards, tucked away in my desk drawer. Look at all this, Margaret's voice dripped with disdain. She thinks these make her special. Don't worry, once you're in the picture, these will disappear. James needs a wife who understands that family comes first, not some career-obsessed woman who's barely home. Jessica looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Parker, I don't know about this. James seems to really love Olivia. Love isn't enough, Margaret snapped. Now, here's what we'll do next. The judge stopped the playback. I've seen enough. Mrs. Parker, you installed these cameras intending to prove your daughter-in-law was an unfit wife. Instead, you've documented your own systematic attempts to destroy your son's marriage. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Margaret looked around the courtroom, perhaps finally realizing how her plan had backfired. Her face crumpled, but not with remorse, with anger. She took my son away from me, Margaret burst out. Ever since they married, he's changed. He supports her career, he's proud of her work. That's not how I raised him. A wife's place is in the home, not gallivanting around saving other people's children while neglecting her own family. I felt James's grip on my hand tighten. 8 years of marriage and I'd never neglected him. Different shifts, yes. Late nights, certainly, but every moment we had together was filled with love, understanding, and mutual support. Until Margaret moved in and began poisoning our happiness with her outdated expectations and manipulative schemes. The footage she gathered as ammunition against me had instead exposed her own interference, her attempts to replace me with someone who fit her narrow view of what a wife should be. Every clip, every recorded moment revealed not my failures as a wife, but her failures as a mother who couldn't let go. As we sat there, watching Margaret's carefully constructed plan crumble around her, I realized something important. Sometimes the truth has a way of emerging, even when it's captured through a lens of deceit. The judge called for another brief recess before making his ruling. As the courtroom began to empty, I felt James lean closer. Olivia, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I am so sorry. I had no idea. I squeezed his hand, 8 years of love giving me the strength to face whatever came next. The cameras had stopped rolling, but our story wasn't over yet. When the judge returned, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric with tension. Margaret sat alone now, her lawyer looking uncomfortable beside her as the judge shuffled through his notes. Before I make my ruling, the judge began, I have reviewed additional evidence submitted by both parties. This includes Mrs. Olivia Parker's professional accolades, patient testimonials, and most importantly, text messages between Margaret Parker and several other parties discussing her orchestrated attempts to end this marriage. He looked directly at Margaret. Mrs. Parker, your actions go beyond simple interference. You've committed several criminal offenses, including illegal surveillance, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Margaret started to protest, but the judge held up his hand. I'm issuing an immediate restraining order. You are to vacate your son's home within 24 hours and maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from both James and Olivia Parker. Furthermore, you will be required to attend counseling sessions to address your controlling behavior. James stood up. Your Honor, if I may speak. The judge nodded. Mom, James turned to Margaret, his voice firm but sad. I've watched these videos in silence, seeing how you systematically tried to destroy my marriage. You interfered with our communications, manipulated situations, and tried to replace my wife with someone who fit your outdated ideals. He took my hand, pulling me to stand beside him. But what you fail to understand is that I love Olivia precisely because of who she is. Her dedication to saving children's lives, her strength, her independence, these aren't flaws to be corrected. They're the qualities that made me fall in love with her. Margaret's face crumpled. But James, I only wanted what was best for you. No, Mom, you wanted what was best for you, and it stops today. As we left the courtroom, I felt lighter somehow. The truth had finally come to light, captured ironically by the very cameras meant to destroy us. That evening, back in our home, James and I began the process of healing. We found and removed all 17 cameras Margaret had hidden throughout our house, in light fixtures, behind picture frames, even in our bedroom. I can't believe she went this far, James said, holding the last camera we'd found in his hands. All these years, I never saw how controlling she was. I'm so sorry, Olivia. I sat beside him on our couch, the same one where Margaret had hosted her family meeting to expose my supposed failings as a wife. You know what's ironic? I said softly. Those cameras captured some of our best moments too. The midnight cuddles when I got home from shifts, the way you leave coffee ready for me every morning, the quiet moments when we just hold each other after a hard day. James smiled, his first genuine smile in weeks. She was so focused on finding evidence against you, she missed all the evidence of our love. The next day, my colleague Linda stopped by. She'd been covering my shifts at the pediatric ward during the court proceedings. The parents have been asking about you, she said, hugging me tight, especially little Max's mom. He's doing so much better now, thanks to your quick thinking last month. I felt tears well up, remembering how Margaret had criticized me for rushing to the hospital that night when Max had a seizure. The cameras had recorded her calling me dramatic and attention-seeking as I ran out the door to save a child's life. James wrapped his arm around me. She's going back to work next week, he announced proudly. Where she belongs, saving lives and making a difference. 3 months later, we received an unexpected package. Inside was a letter from Jessica, along with a USB drive. I wanted you to have this, she wrote. Your mother-in-law didn't just record at your house. She recorded our conversations too, planning how to break up your marriage. I'm truly sorry for my part in it. The footage is yours to do with as you wish. We never watched those recordings. Instead, James and I made our own videos of date nights, quiet moments, and celebrations of each life saved at the hospital. We created new memories, untainted by hidden cameras and secret agendas. Margaret respected the restraining order, though we heard through family that she was struggling to accept her role in what happened. The counseling sessions were helping, they said, forcing her to confront her controlling behavior and outdated views. 1 year later, as I sat in our garden after a long shift, James joined me with 2 cups of coffee. You know what today is? He asked. I smiled. The anniversary of the court case. No, he corrected, pulling me close. It's the anniversary of the day we took our life back. He was right. The cameras that were meant to prove I was a bad wife had instead strengthened our marriage, showing us the importance of trust, understanding, and standing together against those who would tear us apart. As we sat there, watching the sunset, I realized that sometimes the best evidence of love isn't what's captured on camera. It's in the quiet moments, the supporting hands, and the hearts that choose each other every single day. The cameras were gone, but our story continued, stronger than ever. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well, loving deeply, and knowing that no amount of surveillance can capture the true essence of a marriage built on trust, respect, and unconditional love. My son won't share any assets with you, Victoria announced smugly over her morning tea, each word dripping with satisfaction. You're just a temporary decoration until he finds someone more suitable. I kept arranging the flowers in the crystal vase, my hands steady despite the venom in her voice. My name is Olivia, And at 32, I was listening to my mother-in-law gleefully inform me that my 5-year marriage was nothing more than an extended audition for a role I'd never get to play. Marcus and I have discussed everything, she continued, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. The house, the investments, even this vacation property, it's all protected. You'll leave with exactly what you brought. Nothing. I placed the last rose in the vase, adjusting it until it was perfect. The irony of this conversation taking place in her beloved lakeside mansion wasn't lost on me. If only she knew what I discovered in her husband's old study 3 months ago. That's interesting, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. Does Marcus know about the debt on this property? Victoria's teacup clattered against its saucer. What are you talking about? The second mortgage you took out last year, the one that's 3 months overdue. Her face paled slightly before she recovered. You're delusional. This house has been paid off for years. I smiled, remembering the stack of unopened bills I'd found while cleaning her husband's study after his passing. Victoria had always been careless with money, hiding her shopping sprees and gambling debts from her family. Her husband had covered for her for years, but his death had left her vulnerable and desperate. The bank called yesterday, I said, keeping my voice neutral. They're planning to foreclose next month. That's impossible. Victoria stood up, her composure cracking. I would know if you've been opening your mail or checking your accounts. I picked up my purse. You might want to start. I hear there's a buyer interested in acquiring foreclosed properties in this area. I left her standing there, her face a mix of fury and fear. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. My anonymous holding company, funded by my own successful interior design business, the one she always mocked as a cute hobby, was positioned to buy the property the moment it went into foreclosure. Victoria had never bothered to learn anything about me beyond the fact that I'd grown up in a middle-class family. She didn't know about my business degree, my thriving company, or the fact that I'd been quietly building my own empire while she dismissed me as a gold digger. The real shock came later that evening when Marcus came home. I was in our kitchen preparing dinner when he dropped the bomb. Olivia, we need to talk, he said, his tone serious. Mother told me you've been snooping through private family documents. I turned from the stove, studying my husband's face. The man I'd loved for 5 years looked like a stranger, his features hardened by his mother's influence. Is that what she told you? I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. Did she mention the foreclosure notice? Marcus waved dismissively. Mother says you're making things up, creating drama because you're insecure about your position in this family. My position? I couldn't help but laugh. You mean the position where I'm just a temporary decoration? His face flushed. She told you about our conversation. She did. I kept my voice steady. She also mentioned that you've been planning to protect all the assets from me. Were you ever going to tell me yourself? It's not like that, he stammered. Mother just thinks. No, I cut him off. The question is, what do you think, Marcus? Are you capable of thinking anything your mother hasn't approved first? He stared at me, mouth open but no words coming out. In that moment, I saw him clearly, not the successful businessman I married, but the little boy still desperately seeking his mother's approval. The bank called again, I said, pulling out my phone. They're moving up the foreclosure date on the vacation house. Victoria needs to come up with $2.5 million by the end of the month. Marcus's face went pale. That's impossible. The house is paid off. Mother would never. I showed him the foreclosure notice. Your mother's been hiding things from you too, Marcus. The difference is, I did my research. He sank into a kitchen chair, running his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. That house, it's been in our family for generations. Not for much longer, I said, turning back to the stove. Unless someone buys it at auction. I hear there's already an interested party. We have to help her, Marcus declared, standing up. We can use our savings, take out a loan. I turned off the burner and faced him. Our savings? The ones you've been hiding from me? Or do you mean my money, which you and your mother think I don't deserve to keep? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked lost, caught between his mother's manipulation and the reality crashing down around him. I need to go talk to her, he finally said, heading for the door. Before you go, I called after him. You might want to ask her about the gambling debts too, and the credit cards in your father's name that she's still using. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. How do you know all this? Because unlike you and Victoria, I don't underestimate people just because they don't come from money. I met his gaze steadily. Your father knew about everything. He left me a letter before he died, along with all the documentation. He knew someone would need to protect this family from your mother's secrets eventually. Marcus left without another word, but I knew this was just the beginning. Victoria's carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and she had no idea that the person she dismissed as nothing was about to become her worst nightmare. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. It was time to set the next phase of my plan in motion. Victoria wanted to play games with family assets. She was about to learn that she wasn't the only one who knew how to play. The next morning, Victoria's perfectly manicured facade began to crack. I watched from my office window as she stormed up our driveway, waving papers frantically. Marcus had spent the night at her house, presumably dealing with the aftermath of my revelations. "You!" she shrieked the moment I opened the door. "What have you done?" I stepped aside, letting her enter. "Would you like some tea, Victoria? You seem upset." "Don't play innocent with me," she spat, throwing a stack of bank notices onto my coffee table. "The bank says there's an anonymous buyer. It's you, isn't it? You're trying to steal our family property." I sat down calmly, crossing my legs. "I thought you said the house was paid off. Isn't that what you told Marcus?" Her face contorted with rage. "You had no right to go through Gerald's papers. Those were private family matters. Your late husband gave me those papers," I corrected her, "along with a very detailed letter about your gambling habits and shopping addictions. He was worried about what would happen to the family after he was gone." Victoria sank into the armchair, her bravado deflating slightly. "Gerald would never." "But he did," I interrupted, pulling out an envelope from my desk. "He knew you'd never accept me, that you tried to turn Marcus against me. He also knew about the money you've been borrowing against the vacation house." I handed her the letter. Her hands trembled as she read her late husband's words, his elegant handwriting detailing years of financial cover-ups and manipulation. "Why didn't he ever say anything?" she whispered, more to herself than to me. "Because he loved you," I said simply. "He spent years protecting you from yourself, but he knew it couldn't last forever." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "So what now? You'll use this to blackmail us? Force Marcus to sign over assets to you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Victoria, I don't want your money. I have my own. What I want is for you to understand something. I'm not the gold digger you think I am. I'm not here to steal your family's wealth. I'm here because I love your son, even if he can't stand up to you." Just then, Marcus walked in. He looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. He stopped short when he saw us. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "Your wife," Victoria began, but I cut her off. "I was just explaining to Victoria about the buyer interested in the vacation house," I said smoothly. "Meridian Holdings has made a very generous offer, considering the circumstances." Marcus frowned. "Meridian Holdings? I've never heard of them." "They're new," I explained, "but they're willing to clear the debt and allow the current occupant to remain as a tenant, if certain conditions are met." Victoria's head snapped up. "What conditions?" I stood walking to the window. Full disclosure of all financial dealings to Marcus. No more hidden debts, no more secret gambling. And I turned to face them both. "A public apology for the ways you've treated me over the years." "This is blackmail," Victoria hissed. "No," I corrected her. "This is a chance for redemption. Gerald wanted this family to heal, not tear itself apart over money and pride." Marcus stepped forward, looking between his mother and me. "The company, Meridian Holdings. It's yours, isn't it?" I met his gaze steadily. "Yes. I set it up 3 months ago, after finding Gerald's letter. I knew Victoria would never accept help directly from me." "You deceitful little," Victoria began, but Marcus raised his hand. "Stop, Mother. Just stop." He looked tired, defeated. "All these years you've been lying to me. About the money, about Father's wishes. And Olivia?" He turned to me. "You've been protecting us, haven't you? Even while we treated you like an outsider." I felt tears prick at my eyes but held them back. "I love you, Marcus. Despite everything, I love this family. But things need to change." Victoria stood abruptly. "I need time to think." "You have until the end of the week," I said firmly. "After that, the house goes to auction, and I can't guarantee the next buyer will be as understanding." She left without another word, her shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Marcus stayed, standing awkwardly in the middle of our living room. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally. "Would you have believed me over your mother?" He flinched at my words but didn't argue. We both knew the truth. "I found Dad's letter in my office this morning," he said quietly. He explained everything. About Mother's gambling, the loans, how he'd been covering for her for years. He looked at me with new eyes. "He also wrote about you, how you were the daughter he never had, how he trusted you to do what was right for this family." I felt my composure crack slightly. Gerald had been the only one who'd ever truly accepted me, who'd seen past my background to who I really was. "I'm so sorry, Olivia," Marcus continued, stepping closer. "I've been blind, weak. I let Mother control everything, including how I treated the person I love most in this world." I wanted to fall into his arms, to let his words heal the years of hurt, but we weren't there yet. There was still more to be done. "If we're going to fix this," I said carefully, "things have to change. No more letting your mother run our lives. No more secrets about money or property. We either become true partners, or we end it," he finished. "I understand. And I choose you, Olivia. I should have chosen you all along." He reached for my hand, and this time, I let him take it. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still conversations to be had, trust to rebuild. But it was a start. As we stood there, I thought about the vacation house by the lake, about Gerald's letter, and about the long road ahead. Victoria might never fully accept me, but she would learn to respect me. And maybe, just maybe, this family could heal after all. A week later, I sat in my lawyer's office, watching Victoria read through the Meridian Holdings contract. Her hands still trembled slightly, but her face had lost the venomous anger I'd grown so accustomed to seeing. "This is surprisingly generous," she admitted reluctantly, looking up from the papers. "You'll clear all the debts, and I can stay in the house as a tenant." "With conditions," I reminded her. "Complete financial transparency, no more gambling, no hidden credit cards, and family counseling, all of us." Marcus, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. He'd spent the past week discovering the full extent of his mother's financial deceptions. The vacation house was just the tip of the iceberg. The alternative, my lawyer added professionally, is immediate foreclosure and public auction. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Harrison, this offer is exceptionally fair. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers traced the edges of the contract. "And this stays private? No one outside the family needs to know." "As long as you comply with all conditions," I confirmed. "This isn't about humiliating you, Victoria. It's about healing this family." She picked up the pen, then hesitated. "Gerald really left you that letter, telling you everything?" I pulled out the worn envelope I carried for months, sliding it across the table. "Read it yourself." Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized her late husband's handwriting. "My dear Olivia, I know my wife will never willingly accept you, but I've watched you build your business from nothing, seen your strength and integrity. You're the daughter I always wanted, and I trust you to protect this family when I'm gone, even from themselves. The documentation in my study will explain everything. Use it wisely, with compassion but firmness. Victoria needs boundaries she won't set for herself, and Marcus needs to learn to stand on his own. I'm trusting you with my greatest treasures, my family's future and their chance at redemption. With love and faith, Gerald." Victoria wiped her eyes, carefully refolding the letter. Without another word, she signed the contract. The next few months brought changes none of us could have predicted. Victoria, stripped of her financial secrets and forced to confront our addictions, slowly began to change. The family counseling sessions, though initially tense, gave us all a space to speak honestly about years of hurt and manipulation. "I was jealous," Victoria admitted during one session, surprising us all. "You came from nothing, but you built something real. I've just been pretending all my life, hiding behind family money and Gerald's protection." Marcus found his voice too, standing up to his mother for the first time in his life. "I can't be the son you wanted," he told her. "But I can be a better husband, a better man, like Father wanted me to be. As for me, I kept my word." Meridian Holdings maintained Victoria's dignity in public while privately ensuring she stuck to her promises. The vacation house, rather than becoming a symbol of division, slowly transformed into a place of healing. 6 months after the contract signing, we all gathered there for a family dinner. I watched Victoria in the kitchen, actually cooking instead of ordering staff to do it. Marcus set the table, laughing at something his mother said, a sound I hadn't heard in years. You've done the impossible, our family therapist had told me the day before. You've given them a chance to become the family they could have been all along. After dinner, Victoria pulled me aside onto the lakeside porch. The sunset painted the water in shades of gold and pink, reminding me of all the reasons Gerald had loved this place. I'll never be the mother-in-law you deserved, she said quietly, but I'm trying to be better. Gerald was right about you. You protected this family even when we didn't deserve it. I touched the locket at my neck, Gerald's last Christmas gift to me. We're all learning, Victoria. That's what family does. Inside, I heard Marcus loading the dishwasher, another small but significant change. He'd grown too, stepping out of his mother's shadow to become a true partner in our marriage. Later that night, as Marcus and I walked along the lake, he asked, "Do you regret any of it? Taking on mother's mess, fighting for this family?" I thought about Gerald's letter, about Victoria's slow transformation, about our own strengthened marriage. No, I said honestly. Your father saw something in this family worth saving. He was right. Marcus stopped, pulling me into his arms. He was right about you too. You're the strongest person I know, Olivia. Thank you for not giving up on us. As we stood there, watching the stars reflect on the lake's surface, I thought about how sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying our enemies, but from transforming them into family. The vacation house stood behind us, lights glowing warmly in the darkness. It was no longer just Victoria's sanctuary or a symbol of family wealth. It had become something more valuable, a testament to the power of tough love, honest confrontation, and the kind of strength that chooses reconciliation over revenge. Gerald would have been proud.